God, why is
You
this
hit that
not...
button yet?
Yeah, I did.
Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, welcome to Soul Brothers, Solana's finest podcast. With my dear friend Eno and myself, Simon, where it is our job to throw you into the Solana rabbit hole and show you around in our exciting ecosystem.
Our mission is to take you on the latest and greatest so that you never run out of fun things to talk about. Simon, we got a really special fucking guest. Do you know who it is? I know who it is. It's on the goddamn title.
And I just want to say, people know who it is. So if you're watching this podcast right now, I'm pretty sure you know who it is. And yeah, we're really blessed that we are able to speak with amazing founders and amazing people from the Solana ecosystem here on this podcast. And yeah, today I'm super excited. I've been thinking about the interview for quite some time, the whole day basically, because you know how many chances do you have to speak to the founder, the brain behind Bonk? Right? How many chances do you have to have a dedicated slot to just dig into his brain a little bit? And that's exactly what we're going to do today. So we want to try to find out a little bit more about the backstory of Bonk, about the future of Bonk, but most importantly as well, about, well, Nom himself, the person behind Nom as well, to a degree, as much as we're allowed to dig, right? We're going to try to do our job. You know, are you excited?
Yep. So without any further ado, a man who literally needs no introduction. Not only is he one of the original founders of Monkey DAO, but he's also started the entire Bonk ecosystem and saved Solana when we were at down post FTX. And so it is our great pleasure to introduce to the stage Nom. What's good, brother?
I never have enough energy for you. You know, I feel like I always come in at like a 6, and you're at like a 12 out of 10.
What do you want me to do? No, I'm like, I have to stream with this guy like twice a week. So
I think you're good. You're
you know,
mellowing it out. The problem is, I feel like the guests are always supposed to be the ones bringing energy, and never gives me a chance.
That is not true. Though. Like you don't have to do anything today, really. You just have to, be yourself, answer some simple questions here, because we have a lot of questions now, and I'm sure people are excited to hear some answers. There's so much to talk about, honestly, and I want to start with something you said in November 2024. You probably recall it because it was just almost yesterday. Things you do in the internet, they stay in the internet, and this was a post from Nom in 2024, and Nom said, "I think conservatively, we've only accomplished 20% of the ideas for Bonk so far. Can't wait to do more. Accelerate." I don't even know if accelerate was a term back then. Maybe you came up with it. I don't know. Do you remember that quote?
Yeah, I think I stole the accelerate line from Mert. To be fair, I think that was something where he had used it a couple of times previously, talking about the kind of the next generation of how Solana apps were going to be getting built. So I was definitely cribbing that. I'm not that creative in terms of taglines. As always, good artists create and great artists steal, and that's what I try to focus on.
Calm down, Picasso. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, let's look at the line here. You said 20% of the ideas are accomplished so far. Much more to do. That was in November 2024, so pretty much a year ago, I would say. Are we still there? Like, did that number move at all? Like, what happened? Like, are we at 30% now? No.
Yeah, I think 30% is probably comfortable for a little bit more on what we're looking to do. God, I hope it's closer to that if we've spent a year working on this and it hasn't gotten close to those levels. It would be disappointing.
The question is, did you come up with more ideas? That's the thing. Like,
yeah, that's yeah, you guys are very generous to me talking about being founding Bonk, and I'll always reiterate, like, I'm a very public face of it, I think, as one of the core contributors in it. But there are consistently people who are churning out a ton of different ideas, who are coming up with different things that we want to do. And there's always the ability to create new ideas and ideally push those into new applications and new products. The problem always goes down to execution, and as well as making sure that we can continue to push out high quality things that people want. And I think you see that across the space. It's not unique to Bonk, where I think the ideas of what people want to do is usually hamstrung by either the technical capacity or the personnel capacity for pulling any of this stuff off. That being said, I am very happy with how the last year has gone and a lot of the ways that things have been improving and changing. So 30% is probably a little bit more accurate there. So maybe if we keep chugging along 10% per year for the ideas, in 2033, maybe I'll have finished off 100% of what we wanted to do for Bonk.
Well, I mean, it is quite bullish now, like this statement, because it paints a picture of not only of progress, because things are being done, but also of potential progress, right, and potential accomplishment. Like, we don't know yet what special projects are in the pipeline, and what other things you haven't planned, because Bonk is doing a shitload of things. Like, I think some people, I don't know if there's still people out there that think Bonk is just a meme coin. I'm pretty sure there's like some that might consider that. Do you hear that sometimes? And what do you think about the statement of Bonk being just a meme coin?
Yeah, I think I have a conversation about this pretty frequently, and it's usually about people who want to view things as like, Murad does a great job of pushing the pure meme coin thesis, right? The idea that something should just be a community or a cultural vibe. And I think that works for a number of different projects. And I think one of the things that has always made Bonk different is because of the way that it was launched and the time when it was launched in. One of the initial utilities of Bonk was essentially being a gasless fee token, thanks to actually some of the folks over at Blast Control who made initial like gasless Bonk swap early on. You could use Bonk to pay for fees on the Solana network. Like, one of the reasons why we made the token was because we knew that anybody who was still holding Sol at that time was holding it very, very tightly, hoping that it would be, back at 250 one day, like a day like today, where, you wanted to give people incentivization to be trying out different apps. You wanted to get people to spend stuff. And part of the reason was, we wanted people to use Bonk, and we always wanted Bonk to be a part of applications. And we wanted it to be used by developers, and we wanted it to be used as a test token, as a culture token. And so the idea of like just a pure meme coin where it does nothing, I can see how that's valuable, and I can see why people talk about it, but that's not necessarily, I think, what's useful or what's great about Bonk. And I'm always pushing for more utilizations, more opportunities where the token can get in front of as many different eyes as possible, because I think that's long term how you win the attention game, and I think that's how you win flows long term into your token.
I mean, it boggles the mind when I'm just recalling from memory here, and I'm fairly certain that I'm going to miss out on certain products that you're working on. But like Bonk Radio, Bonk Bot, I think you rebranded Bonk for Paws to be what is it?
Is now Buddies for Paws, so still BFP, but making it more inclusive for everyone to participate in the charity side.
Right. So Buddies for Paws. I mean, like, it almost feels like its own ecosystem token. Like, I don't know if you've object to like the L2 framing, and it's certainly not an L2, but it's like you have enough protocols building within the Bonk family to where it almost just kind of feels like, damn, like it's its own, but all on Solana, of course. But it's like, I mean, how many different ideas are you working on do you even have a running number in your head as to like how many initiatives you guys have?
Yeah, I think the latest updates that I was looking at from some of the data polls by previously Flipside Crypto and now the folks over at Dune and Blockworks, there's something like 440 weekly active integrations on Solana itself, which I believe is still ahead of USDC, but we're battling back and forth for essentially being the most used token other than Solana. That's always a guiding star metric that I look at, like, is if you can use Bonk for anything on Solana, why wouldn't you? And if I can't, and if people have a reason to not use Bonk, my goal is always to try to break those reasons down and make sure that people do use Bonk. If you want to talk about like the core of the Bonk ecosystem, I think that's represented now by 12 different companies that are all working on their own ideas and products, and are essentially all pushing, different versions of the Bonk vision and what it should be used for, which I think is a really strong movement towards decentralization, where it doesn't require just like one core company working on one core product. It requires a bunch of different people using a bunch of different ideas. And I like the idea of being a social L2, where obviously it's built on top of Solana and getting, built as heavily as possible to represent all the different things that people can do in the ecosystem. One of the things that I don't want to necessarily do is be a hardware L2. I think we saw a number of different projects that have tried to spin off and become their own ecosystem, and lose out on a lot of the benefits and a lot of the network effects, because the job of running a blockchain is very difficult, regardless of what infrastructure you're utilizing or what you're trying to take advantage of. And maybe people will go into the idea of either the ETH, L2, L3 ecosystem, or AVAX's subnets, or any of these other areas. And now obviously we have spin-offs and forks of Solana that are coming along. That's a lot of work that's being done on low-level infrastructure, or just the process of getting transactions to land, right? And that's time that's being spent away from what meme coins and consumer applications are really good at, which is getting in front of users, getting into their face, and seeing what we can do to get them to spend more time on chain. And that's where I think it's just a lot more beneficial to spend time and energy. We like running validators. We're happy to do that. We work with a couple of amazing partners there. And now there's, the LST that we work with Sanctum, and the different validators that we're working on, I think with 00 and a couple of other groups. But I don't want to, organize and co-locate 400 or 500 different nodes. 3 seems like a lot of work right now already. Maybe that goes up to 5 to 10 in the next couple of years, as it makes sense to scale and we bring more people on for the Bonk nodes, like ecosystem. But I don't want to have to organize an entire network. That seems like a lot of work, and I would rather make consumer apps and fun things and go walk dogs. Like, I think the idea of being a blockchain founder, that sounds like a lot of stress, and not necessarily something we're going to be good for.
I think you might have coined a new term here, social L2. I've never heard that before, but it almost perfectly describes what Bonk feels like to me. It's its own social L2. And speaking of walking dogs, most people might not know this, even though it is pinned to your profile. But the last time you were in the fine city of Seoul in Korea, you broke a Guinness World Record. What was that record, my friend?
Yeah, so that was with a wonderful group called KK9R that operates both in Korea and in the United States that helps to rehome dogs, essentially that are needing new homes for adoption. And so, as a part of essentially a marketing strategy and a stunt, and a part of a longer term effort to try to end the dog food trade, we did, or the dog meat trade, not the dog food trade, dogs eating dog. But we did a world record of the most dogs walked at one time, which ended up being 38. And the goal of that was essentially to work with some fantastic trainers in Korea, highlight the fact that these were all rescued shelter animals. These were not, professionally trained dogs or show dogs or anything there. We weren't picking them by size and trying to maximize, the amount that we got out there. These were genuinely a bunch of dogs that were up for adoption that we spent, a couple of weeks training with and focusing on what we could do to get as many of them healthy and adopted as possible. And I think the KK9R folks are now about 2/3 of the way through the adoptions. Some of the dogs obviously are coming from bad environments, so they had health problems and are in the process of getting all the medical treatment and care that they need before they formally go up for adoption. But there are still some world record dogs available if anybody's looking to add a furry friend into their life.
It seems to be some sort of pattern in the things you do, Nom. As a personality in crypto and on Solana, like you're very Solana centric. That's one thing. You're trying to push Solana infrastructure, the Sol ecosystem as a whole. You're trying to do a lot of good for the Sol ecosystem, and at the same time, you're also trying to go beyond that and use the reach and also the money that Bonk generated to do even other good things in the world. Where's that coming from? I would say, like, why is that? Because it's a trait of your personality. I feel like that you're very engaged in pushing these things, and I believe that most of our audience, and including myself and potentially Eno as well, we don't know a lot about you, really, right? We know who Bonk is, that you're involved in the Bonk ecosystem, but why? What's the why here? Like, why do you do what you do, essentially? And why are you so engaged with all these initiatives that you're running?
Yeah, I think. Super easy, simple thing to knock out in a few minutes. The focus, I think, the goal was never to be an internet personality or really to take on a lot of these leadership roles and opportunities to be on podcasts or things of this nature. I came into Solana from a developer background. I was interested in working on governance, working on the ideas of long-term ownership, and helping to work on stuff like provenance. That's what's brought me into NFTs and what made me interested in trading there. And for one reason or another, I've done a good job at growing a following and working on highlighting a bunch of different people inside of the ecosystem, and that's helped me grow a brand as somebody who helps lead projects, who invests, who focuses on providing feedback wherever I can. And the best thing that I think any of these teams can do is really to get highlighted, to get attention, and to just showcase what teams are working. I think there's a lot of situations on Solana, but not necessarily unique to Solana, where there are teams building cool shit and there are not enough people who are looking at what they're doing because there's a problem of information overload with just massive amounts of advertising. And there's also a problem where people who are good at building things are not necessarily good at promoting those things. And it takes time to be able to find the right person who you're going to work with in order to promote any of this stuff. So I've always tried to use my platform as a way to just highlight anybody who is building something or, who is working on trying to make something cool. And that, that's something that's a daily activity where, I'm always trying to highlight, a bunch of the projects that I invest in as an angel, or the teams that I'm working with for Bonk, or for, previously for Monkey DAO, or for anything else. And I'm not really interested in growing my own social brand. In fact, I'm I'm probably the opposite, where I don't spend enough time trying to grow my own personal brand is what I should be doing for Bonk. But I'd always
Mm.
rather just highlight as many teams that are getting built onto things rather than talk about myself. Every once in a while, it'll convince me and I'll come on and do something. But it's never been about self promotion or creating a personal brand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of figured, man, because I just kind of feel like, how do I describe this? There's no way that you folks can accomplish as much as you accomplish if, I mean, like, you're all, I love you, Nam, but you're only one man. I mean, like,
For
it's
now.
like,
For now.
yeah, for
Well, yeah. Somebody's gonna crack
Oh.
cloning one of these days.
I mean, I'm just looking at simple things. I'm not even simple things. What the fuck am I talking about? I'm looking at like the I mean simple in the sense that, like, this is only one corner of the bonk universe, but what I've been super interested in recently is your work that you've been doing with the ETF filings. If I'm not mistaken, you have 3 of them. What the fuck? And then you also have Safety Shot over in Florida. Which is your the bonk dad. If I'm not mistaken, is that the first like, that's the first like
Dad
alt
kind
dad
of thing?
ever? Yeah, I mean, I
And
mean,
it's not, I don't think it's the
August
first
2025.
alt debt, because I imagine that you have a bunch of the people who are going to come up in arms saying that there was a BNB debt, there was a hype debt, there's a bunch of these other alt
Sure.
debt. I think we've firmly had first meme coin debt set down with
Okay.
with Safety Shot, so I'm happy with that. And going down the list, right? Since last year, one of the things that a bunch of folks have done a really good job of highlighting to me is the importance of making the asset tradable in as many venues as possible, getting strong flows that are going to be able to go in on supporting it on the buy side, making sure that anybody who wants to buy bonk should be able to buy bonk. And one of the things that you'll see a problem of with a variety of alt tokens and not just memes is the availability of exchanges is something that's usually relatively gate kept, and then that requires somebody to be technologically savvy enough to have gone through a KYC centralized exchange, to be knowing what they're buying, to be putting things there. So there's a number of different steps required before anybody's actually able to purchase bonk or any token, even after they've heard it. And I think there's a lot of products that are working on trying to slim that down on the small investment scale of get somebody to be able to buy $100 or $200 with a credit card or any of these onboarding platforms, and that's great. Once you get to a certain scale, I think it then becomes important on looking at what does it mean for someone to have bonk in their bank account? What does it mean for the options markets to be able to trade your token effectively? What does it mean for something like a CME futures listing to be able to happen? Before you can get to any of the big stages of what I've always been looking after, which is bonk ETF, which to date the podcast, the first Doge ETF just went live with one of our partners at RexShares. In order to get a bonk ETF live, there's a ton of steps that are needed to go first on a regulatory approval front, as well as on just getting the asset in a trading area. There's plenty of ETFs that have no volume. The goal isn't to put something out there that people aren't going to want to trade. So part of that was ETP filings, which we announced at Breakpoint last year in the United States, and then we've been working on one in Europe as well. Then working through the idea of what does it mean to create a digital asset treasury. So the idea of having a strong public company that can essentially accumulate bonk as heavily as possible, and act as a steadying force in the ecosystem where it continues to purchase it as often as possible, where the goal is to create as much bonk per share, right, to steal the Bitcoin per share, Sol per share methodologies that a lot of other people have put there. I like the idea of bonk under management comparative to AUM, but for some reason people didn't want to use BUM as an acronym. I don't know why. I was very disappointed that one didn't catch on. But
I think
the goal really is to make it so that anybody who wants to trade bonk should be able to. And these are, Bitcoin's a 15-year-old asset, or more than that at this point, where people are continuing to trade it and find new ways to monetize and be active into it. But past that, a lot of these assets are new and young and very immature compared to what traditional finance is looking for. So it requires a pretty concerted effort to try to be the first one through the door on stuff like a meme coin debt, and then meme coin ETFs and all these other things, in order to get these things live and ready for approval. And in my mind, I think that's what's going to really force the movement or the regulatory change, is having enough loud voices that are making the case for why things should change. That's why you probably saw modifications for the Solana staking ETFs based on the work that Jito and Marinade and Orca and a bunch of other teams were pushing through. Where the only reason that anyone's going to change regulation is because a bunch of loud voices are doing their best, and that shouldn't just apply to the strong technical teams. It should also apply to the social L2 teams, right? We need to be pushing those as much as we can.
I think this whole topic of institutionalizing Bonk makes Bonk definitely stand out in the ecosystem, and I'm curious to hear a little bit about the like, what is it like to talk to these institutions as what they probably consider a meme coin, first and foremost, because they might not have the depth and education that we enjoy. Like, they don't know yet what Bonk is doing, right? Like, how do these conversations even start, and where do you even start in getting to these institutions and proposing something like a Bonk ETF? I can imagine it is tremendously difficult to make people from traditional finance understand why there should be such a thing. We've been battling for Solana ETF like since a year, and here you are trying to push a Bonk ETF forward. Like, where do you even start, and how do these conversations go, and what are some headwinds probably that you're walking into?
Yeah, the first headwind for any of these ETFs is going to be, is the asset large enough or interesting enough to be traded, and what does it mean for the flows into the ETF to be massive, right? So again, using RexShares' Solana ETF that they pushed out, it's sitting now at about 240 million of AUM after being live for, I think, something like 70 days. Is what they did first. So they pushed a SOL staking ETF, which some people argue is not yet, a proper ETF or any of the terminology. Stuff of that nature could get built out. And compare that to the inflows that you've seen to Bitcoin or ETH or any of these, larger scale ETFs, right? You need to be able to understand what the dollar flows are going to be able to get into it. So if you've only got 250 million into a SOL ETF after 2 months, then, and SOL's $120 billion circulating right now, something in that, right? If you push that down to Bonk, which is at a $2 billion market cap, then that realistically means that over a few months you would see a few million coming in over flows. That's not a massive amount, and for an ETF issuer, that's not a compelling use case because they make their money off fees. So to move from there, you really need to be able to explain, like, how is an issuer going to make money on this product is the first problem that you have to solve. And for a lot of these assets, the market cap is too small based on how they're currently monetizing it. The only thing that you get over that is this going to be an interesting or compelling asset, which is a new investment class that these investors previously haven't had a chance to get access to, and are they then going to be able to trade 10, 20, 50 million of these things? And if you can get it to that point where you think, great, let's make the argument for why people are going to trade a ton of this asset and why it's going to be a valuable or useful asset for people to be trading, then you can push something for that. So I think we're going to see probably the SOL ETF and the XRP ETF that are going to get pushed out, pretty heavily over the course of the next few weeks. And from there, we're going to be able to see how that continues to go down the top 10 asset list, then probably the top 50 asset list, and maybe the top 100 asset list. And even then, you've just seen, as of yesterday, the SEC announcing that they're going to be standardizing a lot of these things for crypto ETF approval. So the framework that we've been working on over the last few weeks or the last few years, I think, for the Solana ETF, right, and then obviously over the last year for the Bonk ETF, that might completely change. We don't know. It's great that they're making regulatory changes, but the announcement yesterday was basically, it's going to be different. We'll see. So, we'll see what we can do to organize. And that's interesting, but it's still very difficult.
So it's clear that both DATs and ETFs are going to be very attractive capital magnets, but there is kind of I think a discussion to be had about what is the more attractive investment vehicle, right? I'm curious what your thoughts are on what you think of like DATs versus ETFs as a investable product. Like my personal feelings on this are that DATs are in the short term because they're if you have a company to buy at the very least, really easy to operationalize, a lot easier than ETF. But long term, like you still need the ETF for capital inflows. So I'm just kind of wondering like how you see the differences between DATs and ETFs with regards to attracting capital.
It goes into probably two different areas where the ETF should be essentially like a synthetic version of the asset itself, where you're really just trading, do I think that, SOL is going to go up? I can buy the SOL ETF. Great. What DATs have to do is that they're essentially a sidestep around the current ETF regulation for a lot of different tokens, where now you're interested in the idea, and a lot of this is popularized by, Saylor and Strategy, and now obviously Tom Lee and BitMiner, where the stock now becomes interesting on the idea of how much money do you think the company is going to earn, how much more further accumulation is going to happen, what's going to be the impact of Ethereum staking or Solana staking onto the value of the company long term. Are you trading at various different multiples for Bitcoin or Solana or Bonk or whatever the asset is, right? Like I think now there's about a quarter of the Bitcoin treasury companies that are now trading below their net asset value, which means they're worth less than the Bitcoin that they hold, which shouldn't be happening if the asset is valuable. But clearly there's a market disconnect there. So the DATs are an interesting version of, rather than just betting on whether the asset is going to go up or down, now you're betting on the idea of like, is the community is the company going to improve in terms of its structuring or in terms of new assets or any of these things there, and then we get that pulled off, right? Like it's you're now betting on a company on top of an asset rather than just the asset itself, which, if you want to look at it that way, is you are now making a leverage bet on the asset. Because if I'm buying, if I'm buying a 1.0x MNAV company, right? So they have $100 million in assets, company is valued at $100 million. If I want to bet on the idea that both the asset is going to go up maybe 20%, and I also think that the MNAV can go up to maybe 1.3, 1.4, then I think it's not just going to be a 20% move on the asset. Then maybe it's going to be a 60% move overall for my investment. Both of these things could be, you could look at that as a way to get more exposure to the asset, or to be essentially 1.5x long on the asset itself. So rather than using leverage on a traditional perps or any other centralized or decentralized exchange, you're actually leveraged along the idea of this company is going to outperform. And that requires a lot more analysis. And I think you've seen a lot of examples of it not working well right now because of the various setups in corporate structure and the difficulties of doing these kind of like reverse takeovers and things in public markets. But once the smoke kind of clears and a lot of the froth around DATs has gone down and been less impactful, I think in the next 3 to 6 months you're going to see a lot of high quality companies that either accumulate a bunch of these other digital asset treasuries at a discount, or end up turning into this idea of trading at a heavy premium because of things like increased monetary flows or the idea that they're able to monetize their treasury a lot more effectively. And the difference between a good operator and a bad operator in those companies is going to be huge.
Yeah, that's another thing, right? You're betting on the people as well when you invest in a DAT. Like there's a board, there's directors, there's managers. While if you just buy Bonk Solana on chain, you're betting on the asset itself only, right? So it's kind of there's definitely a twist to that. And I want to get your take on one thought that I'm having, which I don't even know exactly what my take on this is. Honestly, so I need some opinions here. We're trying to get things on chain, right? We're trying to get assets on chain here in crypto. We just got stocks on chain. I'm really excited that I can pop up my Soulflare wallet and buy Nvidia and Tesla stock right there, right? My Serbian friends that could never invest in stocks, they can just do that right now with their Soulflare. I think it's pretty exciting. We get good TVLs on chain. We can LP into stocks, right, on various platforms right now. I think that's all pretty exciting, innovative, and new. Now we're doing kind of the opposite, right? Because we're now taking our new assets from crypto and putting them in a traditional finance wrapper, via whatever sort of vehicle is being used. But like it feels like a little bit like we're taking this legacy frameworks that have been around since a long time, and that that have all these middlemen and are a bit less effective than our things in crypto, and now we're just squeezing in our new assets in there and make them trade on the old rails on the Nasdaq, and they're going to close on the weekends and whatever. So it's a bit like, is it? I think you understand where I'm coming from. I'm trying to understand a little bit if that's a net positive for our space, really, or if there's maybe a caveat here, if there's like some downsides, and maybe you have a opinion on that topic now.
Oh, I have plenty of opinions. Perfect. Let's see if we get canceled for pushing a couple of these ones out. So I think what you initially wanted with a lot of different crypto ideals or individuals being involved was this idea of creating a new, better financial system where it didn't require banking hours. It could be 24/7. You have the global time clock, so you no longer need a North American, European, Chinese trading time, right? That, like, you now have the opportunity where everybody's trading everything all at the same time and the markets never close. And the idea was to replace Wall Street and replace banks and just create something entirely new on chain. And I'm not saying that people aren't still working on that, but that didn't really happen. What ended up happening after the course of 2017 and a lot of the adoption that we started seeing was much closer to something in the middle, where we are now creating crypto-friendly frameworks and building out improvements into the traditional financial system, which I would say are in many parts organized thanks to crypto trading or other organizations. You're going to see movements towards 24/7 stock trading. Over the course of the next few years, you're going to see a lot of changes around the idea of like what assets are available publicly for people to be trading. You're going to view a lot more of the involvement into prediction markets versus the idea of just trading on stocks or specific things there. And so the monetary flow of all of these large scale institutions, and hell, you can even look at it as Tether being one of the largest buyers of U.S. Treasury bonds, and then now the digitalization of various different currencies. The Canadian stablecoin is getting ready to be launched. There's EuroC out of the US. I know there's a bunch of other ones that obviously I'm not naming here, but you're essentially going to see every country have a digital version of their currency that's traded on blockchains. You're going to see all of these digital currencies being backed by treasury bonds. Those are going to be largely positive for the countries themselves, as well as for the just the flow of money into various different organizations. And it would have been great if the entire world changed overnight and everybody started to use crypto for everything forever. But even then, you can look at payment cards or any of these different areas. We're now trying to figure out how do we effectively spend, Bitcoin or stables or Sol itself on traditional payment rails, right? Something where we're just wanting to make it where now I have a Visa card that is entirely, pulled together off of, traditional payment rails, where I just put stable coins into it and I can spend it just like any other Visa card, and I no longer have to worry about my credit score or anything else. It's probably a lot of areas where these things are now heavily in the middle, rather than being all TradFi or all crypto. And much like
Yeah.
the impact of the internet and personal computing over the course of the last 25, 30 years, we didn't make an entirely new ecosystem. We just figured out how computers slotted into the old thing. I think the unfortunate answer is not that crypto or cypherpunks lost. They just figured out how to be set into the right area.
Out of all the companies. Oh, sorry, no, Simon, go ahead. No.
I just wanted to close that topic with the thought that I had multiple times now, and I mentioned it here and there as well. I think innovation is lagging sometimes, and it's not replacing the old immediately. There's a big period that can be decades even of slapping innovation into old frameworks and then gradually doing the twist, right? Like when we were riding the horses with pulling the carts, I mean, not me, but like some people before me, when they did that, they were, driving on these dirt roads, and then some guy came up with this idea to build the car and an engine in the car, and then these cars drove on these same fucking dirt roads were next to the carts, and then at some point the carts and the horses were gone, the cars were left driving on the dirt roads, and we're like, wait a second, maybe we should upgrade the roads, maybe you should fucking put some asphalt here, like that would be better. Why are we still driving on the roads of the horses, right? And I feel like we're gonna drive on the roads of the horses for a few more years or decades even, until we can really replace some of that old stuff with the new stuff, if that makes sense. And it's gonna take a while.
I think. Go ahead, Ian.
No, go ahead, Dom.
No, I think one of the big there was a lot of ideas or expectations of what was going to come out of the .com boom, going back to the early 2000s. And one of the most impactful things long term was actually, large scale undersea fiber cables, right? Connecting various different continents and communities together to the point where they could easily, communicate over the internet, right? And where that was going to be something where it's continuously improved and upgraded and built over the course of the next 20 years, right? There's consistently more cables being deployed and launched and organized. And probably in 2001, that was looked at as something where it was less important than maybe the software or the the websites that were being developed or the applications that were being used. And you're probably going to see the same thing here, where building out the rails and the underside is something that doesn't get as much attention right now, but is long term going to be the most beneficial thing here. And then even then, maybe you get to the point where you can use something like Starlink, and you no longer have to worry about whether there's any of these fiber connections that are getting built out. I think it's something where figuring out how to improve the current setup is the most beneficial thing that any of us can work on. And the question is, what do we do with blockchain technology that's actually going to improve the current, average person's life? And maybe that's just making it so that they no longer have to pay Visa 3% on a credit card transaction that gets passed through to the store.
Thank you.
That might just be big enough. You could just make it 3% more efficient for dollars being transacted.
Yes.
That could be it.
That's what I was trying to say earlier is, look, plenty of smart people work at Visa and MasterCard, and don't mean to denigrate those two companies, but fuck Visa and MasterCard, because the interchange fees are robbery. No, I'm serious. Interchange fees.
You lost the sponsorship. Visa was there. They were ready to do it, and
I told
you just
you,
completely lost
told you
it.
to not do it.
Simon's like, dude, you gotta stop cussing out entire companies. And I'm all like, I feel how I feel. No, but really,
it's fine. It's fine.
But what people don't understand is that the barrier to adoption isn't the fucking tech. The tech is already here, guys, right? The issue is that Visa and MasterCard have spent decades, starting all the way back from the 70s, selling payment terminals, 80s, but payment terminals, right? To every merchant in America. They have really robust teams on every single continent, every single country that are, going door to door. In countries in where, they already have, strong enough adoption, they don't need that. But it's like, even today in, like, let's say parts of Africa, right? Like, I guarantee you that there are teams out there trying to figure out, like, how do we get Visa and MasterCard accepted, in payment terminals locally, or even on the phone or Square, whatever it may be. And it's just like, we got where's our Visa? Where's our MasterCard? Like, that has to be built on Solana. And that's the real barrier to entry there. Bonk, is that the next idea, Nam? bonk card.
Rails.
Bonk card. I mean, I think there's been a number of
pay.
different areas that we've looked at for the payment rails for the teams in that
Yeah.
area. And I'm not going to say it's not something that we don't want to work on. I would say it's in the 70% of the ideas that haven't been completed yet.
Here we go.
I like the idea of organizing all these different payment rails. I think the biggest area for any of these that are especially on like a meme coin area or any token is I don't think anybody's looking for more ways that people can sell tokens. I think any token company is not looking for a new way that people can sell their token. And that's just an honest answer, and probably why a lot of this hasn't taken off as much. A lot more what people are looking at is how do we get more people to buy tokens? That's just what the space is looking for right now. So I think that's where there's a lot of focus, and why obviously new applications that bring dollars off chain on chain are great, because they're usually providing more dollars that people are able to purchase tokens with. So that's more of where my head's at right now. I'll say that. I'm not saying no payment rails ever. I'm just saying having people sell bonk is not my priority.
We appreciate that, Norm. We and the community appreciates that. We want you to work for our backs. Anyway, we need to slowly come to an end here in respect of Norm's time as well. And I think there's not. There's a lot more to ask really, and to dive down. We covered a lot of the ETF and DAT strategies. To kind of just TLDR this topic real quick, because I think that's one of the important things that we wanted to talk about. Give us the current state of things, just like really, in a TLDR form for bonk ecosystem. Where are we with DATs? Where are we with ETFs right now? What does the future bring? How do the next 3 to 6 months look like?
Sure. So you've got a number of exchange traded products, ETPs, and exchange traded funds, ETFs, which are two slightly different areas that are right now filed, waiting for approval. One of those, or some of those, are on the OTC markets or waiting for approval on NASDAQ, and some of those are going to be on different exchanges. So right now we are in the regulatory waiting room and doing everything that's possible behind the scenes to get those pushed forward. I'm hoping that we have some positive news soon. In terms of the DAT, I'm currently serving as a director on the board of Safety Shot, which has expressed a mandate where the goal is to purchase a significant amount of bonk, starting with 5% of the total supply, and then essentially act as a digital treasury where it continues to accumulate tokens at a decent price and increase the amount of bonk under management. It's currently at just over 2.5% of the total circulating supply right now, which is sitting at somewhere in the range of about $55 to $56 million in terms of AUM. And from there, we're looking to essentially push that to 110 to 115 million by the end of the year. From there, once we hit first target, we will continue to examine whether additional targets are needed. But right now, the goal is accumulate more bonk out of that entity.
Good goal.
And past that, there's a lot of other areas for that I can go into. But I would say the TLDR is we are waiting on approval for a variety of ETFs for bonk. More ones are getting filed every single day. There was a Income Blast one that was filed by Tuttle Capital yesterday. So we're hoping that there continues to be more ones getting built out, which is an idea for an income generating or yield generating ETF on bonk. So yeah, more ETFs are being filed. The Treasury is halfway through its current goal of accumulating bonk, and we'll be continuing to build that out. And you can expect a series of updates to the company that I think people will be excited on to make it more clear that this is a bonk digital asset treasury. I think that's the legally appropriate way that I can say that.
Everything I think we got the gist of it. Thanks for giving the TLDR on that. Pretty exciting. So what is the last question from my side? Then if has anything else, we wrap it up. When it comes to the bonk eco right now, Norm, one exciting thing from all the things you guys do, you guys launch tokens, you guys make people walk more, you guys reward people for locking their bonk. There's a lot of things you guys do. what is like, and I know you're excited about everything, so this is a tricky question, but you got to pick one. So what are you like? What do you feel really excited about right now when it comes to the whole Bonk eco and the things you guys are pushing and doing under that umbrella?
So I'll give you two. So one is I'm excited to see how Bonk expands into the RWA space with a couple of partners. We are finishing off a couple of different trial applications right now. So looking forward to releasing and talking more about those to keep you on the edge of your seat. And the second one that I'm very excited on is for anybody who has been getting their steps in or has been utilizing Moonwalk, which is one of the kind of like Bonk ecosystem spin-out companies. You will probably enjoy the next couple of weeks and be rewarded for participating as a Moonwalk enjoyer. So I'm excited for new products getting released in the RWA space, and I'm excited for Moonwalk rewards or incentives.
Nice, guys. App Store and type in Moonwalk, and you can, join some challenges. Be healthy because it makes you walk more, and it incentivizes you to walk. So pretty good stuff, and it's part of the Bonk ecosystem. So get your Moonwalk app. Should definitely use it myself more.
I love all my children, but I especially love these two.
But I have no favorite kids. I'm just telling you about two of them that I think are very good right now. They're good children.
Of course. No,
well, hey, Dom,
it has been a pleasure.
Yes, we really appreciate you coming on. Yeah, I mean it's damn. I remember shit. I mean, you've just been building in this space for so fucking long. It's how it's like.
No, I was like, tell me about it, bro.
Yeah.
It's been
3, 4 years, 4 or 5.
Yeah, I got into Sol
6.
early 21, and before that, I was more active in the EVM ecosystem. So it's been great to be a part of Sol for this long. I'm excited to see. I'm super excited we have a consensus mechanism that everyone can agree on now. That's glad we knocked that one off the list. That I'm very happy to see that go forward.
Yeah. Good old times. Awesome.
Well, maybe next time we see you, we'll ask you questions about Alpenglow.
Heavy, in-depth technical conversations that I'm not qualified to talk about. I'm in. That's what everybody wants to hear.
Perfect. The next episode of this is already locked in, guys. So stay tuned for that. But for today, I think that was a really insightful conversation. Thanks, Nom, for taking the time as well, coming up here and talking to the two, humble guys here that are just trying to tell the community to buy more Bonk, essentially. And yeah, thanks for taking the time out of your day to do that. And we're looking forward to follow what's happening with the Bonk ecosystem and with Bonk, the token, and the DATs and the ETFs and everything else around it. So thanks for everyone to tuning in as well and to listening to the Sol Brothers interviewing the GOATs on Solana. We do more of that if you are listening to this right now on YouTube or on podcast, and make sure to follow us as well on YouTube or on Twitter, because the Sol Brothers pod is pretty much on every channel, and we'd love to have you around. So yeah, thanks, Nom. And we'll see you very soon.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. Bye.
4 words.
Bye-bye.
Bonk now or bonk higher.